Good morning, good evening, and hello everyone. My name is Payal Tandon. I will be your host today in this webinar in which we are going to talk about how is it that you can master geometry, and the principles that you're going to learn in this session. You will be able to apply those principles across all the sections of quant. So it's not just limited to geometry. Whatever you learn here, you'll be able to apply them across the board for all of quant. Now, we do share quite a lot of material with you beforehand so that you are better prepared to attend this session. So we likewise we share Quadrilaterals concept file as well as the process file. So I'd like to understand how many of you had a chance to go through these files. So I'm going to give you a poll here, yes, no. How many of you have gone through these two files? Okay, not many of you. For those of you who've gone through it, really good. For those of you who haven't, that's absolutely fine. We will be covering quite a bit of stuff here, and you will be able to. We will be recapping quite a few concepts here, and you will be able to learn along this session. And then these files are in your free trial access, so you will be able to access them after this session as well. All right, now every weekend we conduct webinars so that you stay up to speed with the right methods and the right approach towards preparing for various subsections in GMAT. So next Saturday we will be conducting our webinar on sentence correction so that you learn the right way of preparing for sentence correction, and then that very Sunday we're going to be conducting a similar webinar, number properties, in which you're going to see how a structured step-by-step process can help you master number properties questions. So if you haven't registered for those two sessions, please do so by clicking on these two buttons here. Now, we always ask this question to figure out this question about when are you planning to take the test, to just figure out the makeup of this group here. And frankly speaking, regardless of when is it that you're taking the test, you will be able to learn the techniques from this session, or learn the approach from this session that you can apply right away from your next study session onwards. So it doesn't matter whether your test is within the next 15 days or whether you have 3 months to prepare. So you will be able to apply these learnings right away for any of the attempts that you have. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move this pane here, and I'm going to change it to our webinar pane. So when you start to see geometry presentation on your screen, please press yes. And I'm going to open that poll here. All right. Sounds good. Okay, so you see Q&A pod towards the bottom of your screen. This is where you can post any question that you have from me, and if I am not able to address that question because I'm in a certain flow in the webinar, then Atreya Roy, who is our lead strategy expert as well as quant expert, he can then answer that question from the Q&A pod. So feel free to ask your questions. And another housekeeping tip, I ask lots and lots of questions. So the more you participate in the session, the more you respond to me, the more interactive and the more valuable the session will be for you. So I urge all of you to participate wholeheartedly. So, all right. Now, I'm going to ask a couple of questions before we get started with this session and with the agenda of this session. So let me bring up that poll. Yes, first of all, tell me, what scares you in geometry? What's the one thing that scares you? Again, you may be scared of quite a few of these, but I'd like to understand what scares you the most in geometry. All right, so I see majority of you are talking about application, that is the application of the concepts, not so much the concepts. Then the timing aspect of the test is also a concern. And I'm really happy to see that there are more people who are concerned about timing, who are concerned about the application than about the timing. And that's actually good, because as you master the application, timing is going to fall in place by itself. I always maintain timing is a consequence. So I'm glad that a lot of you already have that understanding. Too many formulas, vastness. All right. Okay. I'm going to ask another question. Now, in this session, we're going to be specifically talking about quadrilaterals. So tell me, what is your current confidence in quadrilaterals? And I know sometimes we tend to be a little bit more pessimistic, so which is better, I would say. And again, we let the data decide in the session as to what is your true ability in quadrilaterals, and that's going to lead us to understanding what is it that you need to improve in quadrilaterals so that you get to that next level. So I see that 50% of the class uh, is um, is is about 50% confident, and then 36% of the class is about 80% confident. Okay, that sounds good. All right, so now let's come to our agenda here. So the first thing that we're going to do over here is measure your current ability. So for that, what you're going to do is solve 4 700 level questions, and you're going to be solving those back to back. And I will not be giving you the answers to those questions because I would want you to take another stab at those once we start to teach you the concepts and the process skills. Okay, so your performance in the first 4 questions is going to set your baseline of your current ability. Then I'm going to give you feedback on your current conceptual ability. And for that, we have created a specialized set of questions, which you will attempt all together over here, and you'll get detailed feedback on your current conceptual ability as it pertains to quadrilaterals. Then we're going to start working on improving your process skills, and you'll see how, as you start focusing on certain very important aspects, your ability starts to improve. Okay, now by no means am I saying that if you answered, let's say, 3 questions incorrect early on, you will be able to answer all those 3 questions correct. No, but what you're going to learn is that you'll learn what is it that you need to build so that you can get on that path of improved ability. Okay, then we're going to talk about how does the expert AI that powers Quant 2.0 course at e-GMAT improve your ability? That's what we're going to talk about. And then we'll continue improving your process skills. Okay, so let's get started with your ability diagnosis. And as I said, we're going to be solving 4 GMAT style questions here. Okay, so are you all ready? And let me get the poll here for the first question. And I'll talk about how is it that we typically answer questions when I give you a GMAT style question to solve. So you see here choices A through E, and then you see this still solving. So I would want all of you to click on still solving here. So I have about 75, 76 people in the session. Ideally, I would want to get all 76 of you to participate. But I know reality is a little different from what I want. So yeah, let's get this number to at least 40. Well, we crossed 40. That's good. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the question. I don't time, so I don't really put a very strict time limit. So as I see more and more people, let's say 50% of the class has put in the answer. So as soon as you reach your answer, please make that selection, because your selection of the answer tells me that you are done making a choice, making a selection, and then I time the entire class accordingly. Okay, so but give or take about 2 minutes is what it would be. In some cases, it could go beyond 2 minutes as well. Again, we are not really putting you under timed constraints, but yes, there will be some students who would automatically be put in those timing constraints because the rest of the class may have answered the questions, but that's absolutely fine. Don't worry about that. The idea over here is to learn. Okay, so let's get going with this, and I'm going to show you your first question, and here it goes. Go ahead. All right, last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end this poll here. Now, tell me, before we move to the next question, I'd like to understand how confident were you with your answer choice selection? I'm going to make a note of this. Okay, sounds good. Now let's move on to our next question. Now the next question is a version of question number 1. There is just small thing that has been changed in that question. So let me open this here. Reopen poll. Can you please click on still solving? And then I'll move to the next question. Okay, good, very nice. So here is the question, and you can see the change in statement 1. So whatever is the highlighted part or the part in red font, that's the part that has changed. That is the new information here. So yes, go ahead and solve the question. So you can reuse your question statement analysis and then start with statement 1 then. Okay, go ahead. Okay, last 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, and let's answer your confidence level question for this one. Here's the poll. Okay, sounds good. All right, now here comes question number 2, and let me get the poll here. Question number 2. Sorry. Go ahead and please click on still solving. All right, last 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. And let's answer this question now about your confidence level. Okay, so more people are confident about this question than the previous questions. Okay, interesting. Okay, all right, last question here, and let's get the poll. Question number 3. Okay, please click on still solving. All right, and here is the question. All right, seems like this is a question that's a little bit more complex than the previous ones, because I still see less than 50% of people have selected their answer. So let's speed up a little bit here. Last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll here. And let's do our confidence check for this one. Yeah, nobody's very confident. Oh, just one person. Okay, sounds good. 2 people. All right. So we are done with this part here, and we are now going to move into our concept related questions or concept diagnostics. But before that, I'd like for you to do some level of self-critique. I know you guys don't know what the correct answers are, which is by design, but whenever we attempt questions, we get the sense of where we are struggling. I mean, intuitively, we are able to figure that out. So I want you to enter which one of these was more pertinent for you as you solve these 4 questions. And all these were data sufficiency questions, and that's the reason why you see that more of these, 2 of these statements are pertaining to the data sufficiency question form. So let me broadcast this. So 31% of the class faced problems with these questions because they didn't know the concepts. Then we have 42% of the class faced problems because they're not comfortable with DS questions and again could not process the statements. That's similar, 18%, and then other there was it was 9%. So 4 of you who entered other, tell me what is it that you faced problems with? What is this other thing? I think one of those will be timing, less time. That's what I'm guessing. And there's a reason why I didn't put time over here in the self-reflection. Time constraint. See, I was right. There was a very important reason why I did not put time constraint over there, because people always attribute the cause as time constraint, whereas it's not time constraint. It is something which is a lot more fundamental than that, right? So it is usually that you're not able to apply the concepts in appropriate manner under the timed constraint. So now it's not because of your timing, it's because of your lack of application or lack of that ability, right? And that's the reason why I want you all to be able to pinpoint that exact reason as to why you faced problems with this. Because if we don't do appropriate causal analysis, the corrective action that we come up with will not be pertinent and hence will not give us the yields that we are expecting. Okay, so you guys did this. Now let's figure out conceptually where you are at. Now, the kind of questions that you're going to see in our concept diagnostic are going to be very different from what you typically see. So I'm going to show you the question form here. So what you see is, what you will see on your screen are 7 statements. And I want you to select all the read each statement one by one, and then I want you to make the determination whether that statement is true or not. And each of those statements is an artifact of the conceptual understanding that you need to have. Okay, so I'm going to show you, and you're going to see 2 such sets of 7 statements. Now, the choice number 8 over here, let me just states no statement is correct. So if you're selecting choice 8, then that means you cannot select any of the other choices above. And you can see that this is multiple response question. So if you select 2 of these, so you can select more than one is what I'm saying. Okay, all right, so let's get started with this. Here are your first 7 statements. Go ahead, read each statement carefully and then make a determination whether that statement is correct or not. And when you're done, select yes in the bottom poll. That way I know that you are done. All right, last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And then I'm going to bring this back again so that you can see how many choices you selected. Now let's move to our next set. Okay, so, and can you all please click on no in the bottom poll? That way I know how many people are actively engaged with this one. All right, sounds good. And here is question number 2. Go ahead, same drill. Read each statement and then make a determination whether that statement is true or not. Sorry about that. Thank you, Gaurav, for telling me about that. The poll was closed. All right, last 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. And now we're going to talk about the feedback. So here is what you're going to do. I'm going to go back to the previous screen here. So I'm going to get you this one here. I'm broadcasting the results so that you can see what choices all of you selected. Now, here's what I want you to do. Count the number of statements that you selected. Do not include statement 8. Okay, so count the number of statements that you selected for the first set and make a note of that in your scratch pad. Okay, let me know when you're done. Click on yes when you're done. Okay, 10 more seconds. And we're going to do the exact same drill for the second set as well. All right, and I'm going to show you the second set now. Here it goes. Here are the results. Do the exact same thing. Count the number of statements you selected. Press yes when you're done. Make a note of that in your scratch pad, and then we're going to take those two numbers and then we're going to collate your feedback on conceptual clarity. All right, almost everyone's done, whoever is actively engaged in this. If you need more time, click on no. Okay, sounds good. Now, how are we going to give you the feedback? You have these two numbers. In fact, let's go back. In the first set, no statement was true. In the second set, all the statements were true. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to count the number of statements. You already have the count of number of statements for set 1 and set 2. If the number of statements for set 1 was 0 and the number of statements for set 2 was 7, then you belong in group A. So make a note of that. And let me do this. I'm also going to get the poll for you to enter your group. S2 feedback. Yeah. So for those of you who are in group A, select group A over here. Okay. All right. Now let's come to group B. If the set for set 1, your count was 0, 1 or 2, this is OR obviously, and for set 2 your count was greater than or equal to 3, then you belong in group B. So make a selection over here if you are in group B. And then all the others are in group C. So at this point, all of you who are actively engaged in getting conceptual feedback should be able to make a selection of the pertinent group. All other combinations are group C. All right, so now what does this mean? If you are in group A, then that means you have good conceptual understanding as the concepts of quadrilaterals are concerned, which means that when you go through Quant 2.0 course, you will not need to go through the concept files. Okay, you can skip the concept files pertaining to quadrilaterals and you can move straight to the process scale files. Okay, so 13 of you over here who belong in group A, you have good conceptual understanding as it pertains to quadrilaterals. I want to be very specific there. Okay, now group B, it's not that people who are in group B, which actually forms the largest segment here, 55% of the class here, it's not that you don't know the concepts. You know the concepts pertaining to quadrilaterals, but there are some gaps. So what you need to now do is, from the statements that you marked incorrectly, you need to figure out what properties of quadrilaterals you need to strengthen, and then you go into the concept file pertaining to quadrilaterals and you revise those concepts from that concept file. Okay, nothing that you saw as set 1 and set 2 statements, nothing over there is not covered in the concept file for quadrilateral. So you will be able to bridge any and all gaps pertaining to your conceptual understanding of quadrilaterals. Okay, and you have this file, you have access to this file in your free trial as well for those of you who are not as yet e-GMAT students. Now let's come to group C. Group C, my feedback to you is that you need to build your conceptual clarity. Why? Because there are given the number of statements that you selected and did not select, there is a pretty big gap in your conceptual understanding, which means you need to go through the concept file of quadrilaterals in its entirety. And as you go through that file, you will be able to bridge your gaps. Okay, so what does this feedback mean to you? Does this feedback make sense to you? I'd like to understand that. The process that we went through to give you this feedback, does that make sense to you? Does the feedback that we provided to you, does that make sense? And let's get a little bit more elaborate response over here. More specifically, whether you have till now obtained feedback to this level of detail. And it's very important to understand that. Why? Because this is one of the key things that needs to go into your preparation so that you don't waste time doing the things that you're not as yet ready to do. For example, people who are in group C, if they start to answer questions which are more difficult in nature, which are beyond their ability level at that point in time in their prep, then they are going to waste their time and they're going to get more frustrated. Likewise, people who are in groups A and B, if they spend the time going through the content that they've already mastered or that they already know, then by the time they get to the content, they would end up wasting their time. And by the time they get to the content where they actually need to focus their energy on, they would have lost patience, right? They would have felt that, okay, I may already know that. So it's very important to know what your current strengths and weaknesses are. Okay, so really good. I'm really happy to see that this feedback made sense to you. Yes, good. Group A, you are okay. So very interesting over here. Group A, but still struggle with 700 level questions, meaning I lack application. You're absolutely right. That's where we are now going to move to building our process skills, and you will realize which process skill or skills you were facing difficulties to apply to solve the questions, right? Now, there's this other student in group B but got confused. Yeah, and again, that level of clarity needs to be there. If you are confident that you know these concepts, then you should not get confused when you're processing statements such as the ones that you saw in the two sets. Because imagine what's going to happen when you are solving difficult questions, 700 level questions, 700 plus level questions. You will need to draw those inferences on your own by recollecting appropriate concept, right? So if you are in group B, it's not like you don't know the properties. It's just that you don't know them enough. You don't believe in them enough that you can draw inferences based on those properties. Okay, so very important. I'm really glad to see your comments over here. Yes, it helped to pinpoint some concept I was confused with, helped me shorten the review time. Absolutely, and feedback was helpful. Okay, now what I'm going to show you now is the feedback that I gave you in this session in live environment is probably 1/10 of the feedback that you can get when you go through the course on your own using Quant 2.0 Expert AI. Why is that? Because we have dedicated diagnostics for each and every module in geometry course as well as in each and every course of Quant. And what is that dedicated so what do those diagnostics look like? You have GMAT skill diagnostics, so it's very similar to the first set of 4 questions that we solved. That set gave you an idea about your current ability to solve GMAT style questions, right? Then you have the concept diagnostics here. Now the concept diagnostics, right now I had the set of two statements, but in the test, in Quant 2.0 course, you actually see over here 2D2 concept diagnostic. There are 7 questions, and these are questions with multiple choice responses here so these are multiple choice questions here. You then select, so based on what questions you got wrong, you actually get feedback to either skip the pertinent concept file or not skip the pertinent concept file. So for example, this student over here, he was able to solve questions 5 through 7 correctly, which means that he can very easily skip concepts 2 and 3. Right, which means that he would not really need to spend a whole lot of time on these concepts. He can save all that time, but he definitely needs to go through concept 1 because he was not able to answer questions pertaining to that concept. Okay, so that is the level of feedback that you will be able to get as you go through the diagnostics, the dedicated diagnostics in Quant 2.0 course. Okay. And you can actually experience that for yourself. People who are not as yet e-GMAT students can experience this diagnostic, the power of these diagnostics, because you have these 2 diagnostics available in your free trial. Okay. Now, that being said, let's just quickly go through the concept recap over here. Again, I'm not going to read through each and everything. I just want you guys to read through this yourself so that you can just refresh your memory about these concepts. Okay, so the first column is about the sides of various types of quadrilaterals. The second column is about the angles of various types of quadrilaterals. Third one is diagonals, and we will be using the properties of diagonals as we solve the questions that you solved early on, right? We'll be taking another stab at them. Now, the thing for you to note over here, and I want you to write this down over here, what can you infer about the diagonals of a quadrilateral? You don't know what kind of quadrilateral it is, but if it is a quadrilateral, what can you infer or what can you tell me about the properties of diagonals for a quadrilateral? Can you say that they are equal? Can you say they are not equal? Can you say that they bisect each other? Are they perpendicular? No, you cannot say that. Only in a parallelogram you can say that the diagonals bisect each other. Okay, they are, if you are simply given that it's a quadrilateral, you cannot say anything about the diagonals. They may be equal, they may not be equal, they may bisect, they may not bisect, they may be perpendicular, they may not be perpendicular. Now, as you start to get into those special types of quadrilaterals, you start to understand the various properties of diagonals, right? So parallelogram. In a parallelogram, diagonals are not equal, but they bisect each other. As you go into rhombus, which is a special kind of parallelogram, again, not equal, they bisect each other, but in addition to that, because it's a rhombus, the diagonals are perpendicular to each other. Likewise, when you move from rhombus to a square, now the diagonals are both equal. Okay. Now, when you move from parallelogram to a rectangle, the diagonals in a parallelogram were not equal, but diagonals in a rectangle are equal, but diagonals are not perpendicular to each other in a rectangle. Okay, so very important to understand this distinction about what can you infer about diagonals for a quadrilateral, for a parallelogram, for a rhombus, for a rectangle, for a square, and for a trapezium. Okay, so I want you to make sure that you understand all of this really very well. Okay, and all of this is covered in the concept file pertaining to quadrilateral, so make sure that you have razor sharp focus when you're going through that file so that you don't misunderstand any of these properties. Now, similar to diagonals, you have properties for area as well as perimeter. Again, you all should be comfortable with these. Okay, now we are, with that being said about concept understanding, let's now start building our process skills. And what we are going to do now is solve simpler questions. These are not going to be complicated questions. For each 700 level question that you solved up front, we have created an easier version of that question, problem solving, easier version of that data sufficiency question in the form of a problem solving question, which you're going to solve now. And then based on your learnings from that particular question, you will be able to, some of you may be able to solve that data sufficiency question correctly. Okay, now how many of you are familiar with the process skills that we teach in Quant 2.0 course, or that form the base fundamental of the Quant 2.0 course? Okay, so okay, that sounds good. How many of you apply these process skills consciously? So about 63% of the class knows, and I want to understand how many of those actually consciously apply these process skills. Okay. Why is it that you don't apply these process skills? If you know of them, what stops you from applying these process skills? Just want to understand before we start going through these questions. Is it that you don't know how to apply, or you don't feel the relevance of them? What is it? Don't know how to apply. Okay. Don't know how to approach the problem. Okay, sounds good. All right, let's try to change that. Time constraints tend to panic when solving wordy questions, especially data sufficiency. Might not always be instinctive. Okay, didn't remember the concept. Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's solve this question, and then we'll see how you should build your ability to apply the process skills. And I'm going to show you the poll. Go ahead and again click on still solving. All right, last 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. All right. Now tell me, why did you take so long to answer this question? This question is not that difficult at all. So tell me, where were you stuck? Were you stuck with the language of this question, or were you stuck with the geometry concept aspect of this question? What's your assessment right now? We will go through the question, definitely. We'll go through the solution, but I want to understand, where were you stuck right now? Calculations? Wasn't stuck, it was easy. Language of the question again. Why I'm saying that more people were stuck in this question than what I would have expected, and that's the reason why I'm asking, because you guys took quite long to solve this question correctly. All right, so let's figure out exactly which step were you confused about. Okay, so let's understand that. Now observe the highlighted portion, and what I want you to do is, let me just get the right poll here. What is the relationship between A and B? Length A and breadth B. And here are my choices. Mark the correct answer. What is the relationship between length A and breadth B? Just based on the statement that you see. All right, so majority of you are saying 18, choice number 4, A is equal to 1.21B. And that's absolutely correct. So when you see the length of the rectangle PQRS is 21% more than its breadth, this means that that your breadth is B, which means the length will be 1.21B. Now, how many of you had to write this equation down in terms of percentage and then come up with 1.21B? How many of you had to do that? And I'll get my yes no poll so that you can just press on yes or no. Yeah, go ahead. Tell me, how many of you had to write this down? That is 21% more than the breadth. So yeah, I'm going to clear it out now. Tell me. Okay, so you had to write this down. So quite a few, so some of you had to, about 40% of the class. Now this is something which so when you read a statement like this, if the length of the rectangle is 21% more than its breadth, I want you to right away translate that as B is the breadth or the width and 1.21 is the length. That is the speed, that is the level of analysis that I want, processing that I want you to do in your head, and I want you to write that down in your scratch pad, in your notes, in this tabulated manner, in this table, what the final translation is. Now, how do you get to that level? You get to that level by going through the specially created module in Word Problems course, in which we talk about how do you do translations. And we have a separate concept file in which we teach you how do you do percent related translations. Because if in the exam environment you take the time to write down each and every step over here to get to that 1.21b, then you will end up losing your precious time. Okay, that's how the level of clarity that you have in the processing over here in doing the translation, that translation now is going to save you your precious time in the exam environment. Does that make sense? Yes or no? And again, you'll see me talk about these time-saving techniques every now and then in this session, but and you will start to see a pattern over there that all those time-saving techniques are actually related to the process skills. As you apply process skills, as you learn how to apply those process skills, you will be able to save time. That's why I say timing is always a consequence. Okay, so this was the first example of that. Right, now let's proceed here. What is given to us? Area of the square ABCD is equal to area of the rectangle PQRS. So I simply put my area in the table. Now let me ask you one more question. How many of you actually tabulate the information from the question statement in this manner? Yes or no? Okay, not many of you tabulated. How do you do? If you don't tabulate the information, what do you do then? What do? You do it mentally, okay, mental math, you draw it out, okay. Drawing is good, but doing it mentally, I want you to do the 1.21 in your head, and those of you who cannot do it, I will teach you that, right? And that's the reason why we have this translations module in word problems. But you need to start putting information in a tabulated manner, especially for the data that is related to one another. Over here, you have a square, you have a rectangle, you have properties of length, width, area, perimeter, both for square and for rectangle. So it makes sense for you to tabulate that data and not consider each data point as a separate line item, as a separate bullet item. Okay. This is the process skill of visualization. Okay, and this is something that we teach again in the word problems module. We have a separate module dedicated in the word problems course. We have a separate module dedicated to how do you visualize information, and visualization can be either done in as your images, or as your table, or as your tree structure, whatever makes sense for that particular problem type, okay, for the kind of problem, for the kind of data that is presented to you. And that is another time-saving technique, because if you organize your information in this manner, you end up removing a whole lot of stuff from your brain, and your brain is then utilized to only do processing for the information that is pertinent to you to process. Okay, so when you are writing this down in the table, you are automatically bringing structure to that information, and that structure helps your brain process that in a much faster manner. Does that make sense? Yes or no? And again, these are things which people don't normally pay attention to, and that's the reason why they keep focusing on the incorrect things to change the incorrect levers. They keep pulling on incorrect levers, and that's the reason why they get frustrated, because they don't see the improvement. But if you start focusing on the process skills, if you start learning how to apply those process skills, you will be able to get to that ability, and you will be able to get to that ability in the timed constraints of the test. Okay, now let's proceed. Translation. Area of the square ABCD is equal to area of the rectangle PQRS. This means S squared is equal to 1.21 B squared. This means S is equal to 1.1 B. How many of you had problems doing this level of calculation? Again, did you have to think where should the decimal be placed? Should it be 0.11? Should it be 11? Did you have to think about that? Yes or no? Let me remove this. Did you 1.21 b squared, when you took the square root, did you have to think about where would the decimal come? Would it be 11? Would it be 0.11? Would it be 1.1? If you had to think about that, then that means you need to build your ability to do calculations. How many of you had to think about that? Press yes if you had to think about that. Then that means that you have to, so all these 10 students, 11 students now, you need to build your ability to do these kinds of calculations. As soon as you see 1.21 and you need to take a square of that, it should be 1.1. There should not be any processing in your brain to be done to figure out where to place the decimal. That's the level of conceptual clarity that you need to have. Now, how can you build that foundational skill? You go through Quant Basics. In Quant Basics, we have a separate module dedicated to decimals. We teach you how do you process decimals, how do you do various kinds of operations on decimals. We teach you squares and square roots, cubes and cube roots in a specially designed module, so that when you are solving questions in the test environment, you're absolutely certain. You look at 1.21, square root of that is 1.1. Okay, that's the level of agility that you need to have. Okay, now let's proceed. And so far, if you think about it,
There's nothing that I've talked about that pertains explicitly to geometry, which is why, I mean, I'm not focusing on whether you know what area of square is or whether you know what area of rectangle is. No, I'm not focusing on that at all. I'm asking you questions that are applicable across the board, regardless of whether you're solving a geometry question or a word problem question or a number properties question, right? And again, these are the skills that you build which lead to you being able to solve questions in the timed environment. Okay, now let's proceed. What is given here? We need to figure out, so now we have figured out that S is equal to 1.1b. Now what is it that we need to figure out? We need to find out the ratio of the perimeter of ABCD to the perimeter of PQRS. So again, we need to translate this appropriately. For those of you who selected choice C, and there were 4 of you who selected choice C, you made that selection because you did not do translation appropriately. Okay, you reversed it. Okay, again, that's where the process skill of translation comes into picture. Okay, let me broadcast the results here. Yeah, so 4 of you who selected choice C, you made that mistake. Okay, now all you have to do over here is you have A and you know that A is 1.21b. You put that in there. You have S and you know that S also in terms of B, and you substitute that. Then all you have to do is simplification. Okay, that's it, right? And again, over here, there were quite 8 of you who selected choice E, none of the above. Why? Because you probably were not able to, you probably made either some calculation error or you did not process the information in the tabular manner the way it should have been. So let me ask you this. Why were you not able to get to the answer choice B? People who selected choice E, 8 of you. What happened? Which step did you falter at? In fact, I would want everyone, people who, other than the 16 people who selected choice B, I would want everyone else to tell me which process step did you falter at? Error in calculation, elaborate that a little bit more. Conceptual gap, which concept gap? Elaborate that a little bit more. And again, I can solve all these questions. I can show you the solutions of these questions to you within the next 15 minutes, but that will not lead to your learning. What's going to lead to your learning is why is it that you are faltering at each and for various steps. Okay, didn't translate the language of the question. I'm going to ask you again, what specific language did you not translate? Mistake in taking a square root. Okay, good, very nice. So for you, the corrective action is going through the calculations module in Quant Basics course. Okay, conceptual gap. Again, tell me which conceptual gap. Didn't convert percent to decimal, took long time for calculation and was not able to select the answer. Very good. Very, very precise causal analysis over here. So percent to decimal. That is a concept that we talk about in Quant Basics course. So for you, I would strongly recommend go through Quant Basics course. We actually talk about these conversions percent to decimal and we make you efficient in doing those conversions so that you don't end up spending time, okay, 25% more than the breadth. Is it 21 times breadth? Is it 1.21 times breadth? What is it? Or is it 121 times breadth? Again, all those things we teach you. Okay, so good. Got lost in the ratios. If you got lost in the ratios, then that means you need to focus on your translation ability, which means before you even go into geometry course, you should go through word problems course, because the first 2 modules in word problems are pertaining to translations, visualization, and then application of that. Okay. Decimals, again, Quant Basics, didn't use 1.1, I used 11 by 10. Okay, so you used 11 by 10 and probably that's the reason why you selected choice D, which means you did not do further processing. Okay, got confused while substituting the values. Okay, you got confused, which means that you are not organizing your information in the right manner. That's what happens if you're getting confused while you are solving the question. Then that means you are not you're not organizing the data in your scratchpad appropriately. You're not doing neat work. Okay, mistook square ABCD to be rectangle ABCD, rushed through the reading question and posed that calculation too was a pain. Absolutely. And see, I'm so happy that you guys are writing such precise statements, because as you write these precise statements, that's where the learning comes from, because that's when I can tell you why is it that you're faltering, what is it that you need to build your skill. Now, if you mistook square ABCD to be rectangle ABCD, then that means that you need to pause. You need to take it a little bit slow, okay? And again, that's the mistake that a number of students do. Because they feel that they need to solve a question in a particular time, in a particular amount of time, they rush through it. And the very fact that they are rushing through it means that as they go into the solution of the question, solving the question, they will get convoluted. They will actually get confused, because think about it, the numbers in the question are set keeping in mind that it's a square ABCD and not a rectangle ABCD. So you are actually digging a big pothole for yourself by rushing through the question in the beginning itself. Okay, so do not short circuit the process. Okay, that is very, very important. Now, I knew somebody is going to ask me the question, how much time should a test taker take while solving this question? That's not the right question to answer. Okay, um, that's not the right question to ask at this stage. Okay, how much time you take depends on what your level of ability is. Now, this question, if you are if you want to solve 700 level questions correctly, then this question you should have been able to solve within 1 minute, maybe 1 minute 15 seconds. Okay, and again, think about it, the solution is right there in front of you. If you made your skill set in each and every aspect that we talked about till now, imagine how much time saving you will have. If you started to put all the information in the tabulated manner, if you build up your ability of how to do calculations in the in more efficient way, if you build up your ability to read and translate slowly. Yes, I'm talking about reading the statement slowly, because that's when you are extracting the information from the question statement. I don't want you to rush, because if you rush, you will start to make mistakes. And if you start to make mistakes, you will get stuck when you have to do calculations. Okay, so very, very important to pace yourself appropriately in the question statement. You noticed me saying that 1.21 square root, right away 1.1, right? There should not be any processing time spent there, right? When you're right, but when you're formulating your ratio, I want you to slow down, because if you make a mistake writing the ratio other way around, you will end up costing that question. Right? You will end up marking incorrect answer choice for that question. When you're reading the question statement, slow down. Okay, but when you're doing calculations, fast. And that's why we teach you how to do those calculations in fast manner. When you're documenting that information, I want you to structure your information properly. I want you to take the time to write down square. Maybe you can write SQ. For rectangle, you can write RECT, length, W, area, perimeter. I want you to write those things down, because that's the beauty of it. You need to pace yourself appropriately on appropriate steps, and then make yourself fast for the other steps. Okay, how can we take more organized notes on the scratch pad? You go through the visualization module in Word Problems course, you learn everything about that. Okay, all right, let's proceed. Now what we're going to do is, okay, tell me, what all learnings have you had from this question? I know we spent quite a lot of time on this question, but I have a feeling, looking at your comments, that it was time well spent. But I'd like to understand from you, what have you learned from this question? Read slowly. Good. Did you ever think that somebody is going to tell you in a quant question to read slowly? Okay, how to go even faster? Look at this one single question, and there are two different takeaways. Both of those are absolutely pertinent. Both of those are applicable to those students. Use decimals instead of percent. Okay. What else? Tabulate data. Very nice. Reading the question slowly and understanding it actually saves time at the end. Absolutely. Take more organized notes no matter what. Very, very pertinent learnings from this question. Read question slowly, organize your data, calculate faster. Very, very well summarized. Okay. All right. So don't make hasty assumptions. A very valid point, and actually Hold on to this point, because this point, I want every one of you to make a note of this point, because yes, even though that wasn't a learning that I explicitly had or I explicitly talked about in this question, but this learning is very important for the subsequent questions that you're going to solve. Okay. Learned how to leverage process skill to identify the areas requiring improvements. Very, very good. Okay, so now let's apply these learnings to this next question. Now I want to give you another opportunity. Now let me ask you, do you want another opportunity to solve the first data sufficiency question that you solved? Or do you want me to just go through the solution? Tell me, how many of you want to solve that question? Yes, no. With this renewed understanding. Okay, good. I'm glad you guys want to take another stab at it. Now, I want you to observe that both these statements have very similar language, okay? And so make sure that you are translating these two statements correctly. So go slow when you're doing that, okay? Now, some of you, obviously, because you haven't gone through those modules yet that I talked about, how to do percent to decimal conversion and things like that, you may still take time to do these. Um, and that's okay, right? So you may not get a chance to completely process this information because I will be speeding up a little bit here. That's okay. You already have had your learning. I want you to go through the solution that I present so that you can then extract more learnings from it. As I said, I don't expect all of you to now suddenly solve this question correctly. Okay, you have to do some work at your end, going through the Quant 2.0 course, incorporating the feedback that I've given you, and then you will be able to solve this question correctly. Okay, now I also want to reiterate, or not reiterate, I want to highlight the process for solving data sufficiency questions. Okay, whenever you're solving a DS question, you need to do a very thorough question statement analysis, which means when you're analyzing the question statement, you need to do it slowly. Okay, very, very important. Don't rush through the statements. Don't think, oh, statements are going to give me more information, so let me process all that information together. Not at all. That's a recipe for disaster. So, question statement analysis, extract everything from the question statement, simplify it to as much degree as you can. Then you go through statement 1 alone. Don't even think about statement 2. Think that statement 2 doesn't even exist. Okay, and then appropriately, if the statement 1 is sufficient, then eliminate choices B, C, and E. If not, then eliminate choices A, D. This elimination of choices is very important in data sufficiency questions. Why? Because you then, when you just have two choices to deal with, your mind starts to think about it a lot more clearly. But when you're dealing with 5 choices, you're like, okay, could it be this? Could it be that? So it's more of a mental game rather than anything else, a data sufficiency question. Okay. Then when you move to statement 2, forget all about statement 1. Statement 1 doesn't even exist. Okay. And then see if statement 2 alone gets the answer. Again, when you're analyzing each statement, read slowly, because that translation is going to be the key to solving the question. Okay, so let's proceed with this. And people who are not very comfortable with data sufficiency questions, I strongly recommend going through the Quant Basics course. The last module is dedicated to data sufficiency questions. Students who have gone through that module have breezed through number properties, word problems, all the other modules, or all the other courses. And students who don't go through that module appropriately continue to face problems in the subsequent courses. So before you, if you're working on geometry right now, but you see data sufficiency questions as an issue, I want you to pause your geometry learning and go back to Quant Basics course, the last module, go through that in its entirety. You will start to see the difference right away. Okay, all right, that being said, let me now show the question. Here it goes, retake, and please click on still solving. All right, here you go. All right. Okay, last 30 seconds. Actually, the pace of making a selection has gone down. So let me just stop this right now and let me broadcast the results. Okay, so how many of you were more confident this time around? I think confidence is the key to at this point, because again, you haven't gone through the corrective actions. You haven't been able to take the corrective actions just yet. But I see that 9 students were more confident this time around. So that's an improvement. So you can see, for those of you who are more confident, you can see the impact of process skills here. Now, let's just quickly go through this. What's the cost to fence a rectangular plot? So as soon as you see the word fence, you automatically need to think, what property of rectangle do I need to determine? You need to ask that question in your head. And the answer over here is perimeter, right? So you have to calculate the perimeter, which means that you can now set up the cost to fence will be perimeter times $20 per meter, right? So you then figure out that what is it that you need to find out is the perimeter of this rectangle, right? Now, to calculate the perimeter, you either need both the values a and b, or you need the value of the sum of a and b. How many of you came up with this inference that you need the value of sum of a and b? Very, very important. Okay, so good. How many of you did not come up with that inference? So people who are selecting no, I'm guessing that those are the people. Okay, let me remove this. People who did not come up with this inference that they need the value of a plus b, select yes. Because my feedback to those folks will be that you need to extract everything. You need to draw appropriate inferences from the question statement. Okay, that's very, very important. All right. Now, and that's something which you're going to learn as you go through the GMAT skill files in which we talk about data sufficiency questions. You'll start to build that ability as you solve those questions in Quant 2.0 course. Okay. Now let's look at statement 1. And again, statement 1 required us to do all the processing that we talked about in the previous question, in the process skill question. Now, if you process this information, if the length of the plot is increased by 10 meters, the area of the plot increases by 100 meters square. So observe all the processing that we are doing. Okay, new area is equal to original area plus 100, right? Now, because I tabulated this information so well, when I had to put the appropriate items in this equation, it was a breeze for me. It was a cakewalk for me because I didn't really have to think what is it that I need to put in. I had all the information on my scratch pad. That's the beauty of visualizing it in a tabulated manner, right? And that's the beauty of writing down stuff, right? Okay, and then all I do is I do the simplification, and then what I end up getting is the value of b, which means from this statement, what are we getting? We are getting just the value of b. We don't have the value of a, which means that the statement is not sufficient. So for those of you who selected choices a and d, that's 6 of you, tell me, where did you falter? And again, it's an opportunity for us to learn from the other students, from the mistakes that other students have made. So tell me, for those of you who selected choices A and D, who thought statement 1 is sufficient, tell me, what is it that you did not do so to arrive at that incorrect conclusion? Where did you falter? All right, I don't see anyone typing here, so let me move forward. But again, very important for those 6 students to make that determination as to where I solved till getting the value of b, but then could not take it forward. So if you could not take it forward, then why did you select that statement 1 was sufficient? Why did you think that? Right? That's a question that you have to ask yourself. And again, it's very important to ask these probing questions as you are reviewing the solutions, because the answers to those questions will help you understand which process skill do you need to build upon. Okay. All right. So now let's move to statement number 2. If the length of the plot is decreased by 10% and the width of the plot is increased by 10%, and I'm breezing through this. Why? Because you have already gotten the feedback about the fact that you need to build the skill set. Okay, let's go back. Because I thought if I have B, I can take out A. So again, you thought, right? But if you write down everything on your scratch pad, so the corrective action for you will be to write down everything in your notes, clearly organize information so that you know what information you have and what information you do not have, so that you don't draw these incorrect inferences. And again, think about it. This has got nothing to do with geometry concepts, right? This is purely a process issue which is applicable across the board for all quant courses, right? I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're making this mistake in geometry. The very fact that you're going to fix this mistake now is going to help improve your ability in word problems, in number properties, in advanced topics, in algebra. That's the reason why I said whatever you learn from this session, you'll be able to apply them across the board for all of quant subsections. Okay, now let's take a look at this. If the length of the plot is decreased by 10%, which means that if the original length was A, the new length is 0.9A. Okay. And the width of the plot is increased by 10%, which means if the original one was B, then the final one is 1.1B. So observe that I'm doing that analysis and I'm doing that calculation in my head. Okay. And then I'm tabulating that in this table here. Okay. Now, I also then write down what the perimeter is. Okay. Why do I care about the perimeter? Because that's what the question statement is telling me. Perimeter decreases by 5%. Now here, I have written down nu is equal to original minus 5 by 100 over times original. I don't want you to write that statement down. The reason why I wrote that down over here was just to show that you should not be writing that down. You should right away say nu is equal to 95 over 100 times original. Okay. And that's the level of agility that you will develop as you go through the quant basics course. Okay. So now you have this equation. You simply substitute the values from the table into this equation. And again, observe there's quite a few numbers over here, right? It may seem like an equation that is not solvable, but that's where your simplification skills come into picture. Okay, very important to build that simplification skill set so that you don't get intimidated by such equations, okay, where you have a lot more variables than the constants, right? So what you end up getting over here is a relationship between A and B, basically more specifically ratio of A and B, from which you cannot calculate the sum of A and B, which means that this statement is not sufficient. Now, when you come to both the statements together, you have ratio between A and B from statement 2, and you have the value of B from statement 1, which means you can find the value of A, right? Which means both statements together are sufficient. Okay. Now, let me read through this comment here. One issue I'm having is when to decide to go ahead and do the full math or trust my mental logic that math will work without having to calculate. Where is that line? Well, here is the line. You can see that over here. In this case, you have to simplify, and that's a very good question. And you will, and again, you may not have that confidence right away, but as you go through the Quant 2.0 course, you will start to see all those things laid out to you in that manner, because this is a very important content piece which we have paid attention to, and we have covered that in our course. As you can see over here, simplification process skill, manipulation process skills, those two process skills are there so that you understand to what level of detail you need to go through in order to solve the question. Okay, there's a reason why those two process skills exist. Now over here, if you observe, I did not calculate what the ratio between A and B is. All I see is 0.95A minus 0.9A. I needed to get to this level, right? So that I could visualize that I'm getting an expression in A over here and on one side, and an expression in B over here on the other side, and I can actually take the ratio of A and B. What that ratio is doesn't matter. Okay, all I know is that I can do that. I can figure out that ratio. Right now I go into statements 1 and 2. I don't need to calculate the value of A. All I know is I can find the value of A, and that's the beauty of data sufficiency questions. You don't need to find the complete value. Okay, all right. Now I could see that one student said, "It's this question is such a headache. I thought I was good at geometry until now." And again, as I said, it's not that you're not good in geometry. It's just you know the concepts. And that's where it's very important to understand that when you say you're good at geometry, are you saying that you're good at the concepts of geometry, or are you saying that you're good in solving 700 plus level questions? Okay. If you guys attended the webinar yesterday in which Rajat talked about the 3 stages of learning, what you would have taken away from that webinar is that you have to build things in a step-by-step manner. You first learn the concepts, then you learn the methods, and then you continue to fine-tune those in stage 2, which is called as cementing stage, right? So learning concepts is, and again, I will be talking about that later on in this session. So hold on to this comment right now. Okay, so I will definitely talk about that. If one had to eliminate choices in time crunch for such type of question, how to approach? Well, you don't eliminate choices in time crunch. As I said, you cannot change your approach to solve a question just because you are under time constraints. You have to apply the process skills, because think about it. If you don't read the statements appropriately, you'll get to incorrect translated equations. Where is that going to take you when you're solving the question? Okay. So again, very important to not lose sight of your process skills. Okay. Do we have that much time to process for this question? You absolutely do. Remember, I have already told you what all things you need to build upon. Imagine if you were able to, if the length of the plot, let's look at statement 2. If you knew if you were able to translate that statement into this tabulated manner within 15 seconds, you have all the time in the world to solve this question then. You have to figure out which process step you're taking longer to do, and you need to go back to the course and build that process skill, build that ability. Okay, that's something which you have to do. All right. Now, there was one other comment about a student saying that he seconds this comment, but I don't see that anymore. I think that got overwritten. Yeah, so I don't know what you said, because I know you've said this is something which happens repeatedly for me in DS questions, so I can't really elaborate on that. So try to solve the second equation mentally and struggle to arrive at the latter relation. And again, don't do it mentally. No, do certain things mentally. As I said, right? 1.21 square root of that is 1.1. Do that mentally. But all of this processing, you need to write this down properly. Okay. All right. I took A as 20 and B as 10. Okay, where is that? I got the answer with statement 1. Okay, that is not the right web method. Plugging in numbers is not an appropriate method to solve such questions. Why? Because you can select a set of numbers for which that statement gives you the answer. But what if you have another set of numbers? How do you know that you have taken all the possible values of A and B that the question statement that falls in the space of the question statement to figure out whether statement 1 is sufficient or not? So please do not rely on number substitution. Why? Because you don't know whether you have taken all the possible values of the numbers of the variables to do that level of processing. Okay, so don't make that mistake. All right, so we're not going to solve this question separately, but you will have the PDF for this one. And over here, I want you to focus on this, that statement 1 over here is sufficient. Why is it sufficient? Because as you process this information, you get the value of A plus B, which is why the original statement analysis, the question statement analysis is the key. Had you not considered that you can find the answer to the question by simply finding the sum of A and B, you would have rejected statement 1 as well. Okay, so very, very important to do that thorough analysis. Okay, Now, let's go through this question here, and I will let me know how the session is going so far. We have quite a bit of content to cover, but I think by spending more time on question number 1, usually I'm done with question number 2 by this time. But again, as I said, your inputs really drive how the session goes, and I'm getting a lot of good input from you guys, which is why I'm able to give you all that feedback. Okay, learning mistakes from others, engaging, good. I'm really glad, because somewhere I start to feel a little anxious whether I should be speeding up here, but at the same time I know it's good discussion that we are having. So can you show us our answers from the previous time? Absolutely, I will do that. So yeah, while I have the first question over here, sorry, this was your first stab at the question, and this is your second stab on towards the right hand side. Okay. All right. Now let me show you your second question. Oh no, so this is process skill question here. So let's solve this question now. Again, go slow, visualize, and then solve. Go ahead. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. People who are selecting choice D, think twice, read the question statement once again. Yeah, I see that now. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so I know not many of you have attempted this question. I guess you guys are tired right now. Are you guys tired? Yes, no? No, okay, yeah, people who are typing, okay, all right. So we'll continue with this session. I'm not going to end the session just yet, but I may need to go through the primary learnings for this, okay, so that you get the most from this session, okay. So all right, so the correct answer here is choice C, and I could see quite a few of you had selected choice D, but when I gave you a warning, you guys went to C. Why was that? This time you found the question easy. That's really good. Yeah, so tell me, people who change from D to C, again, learning from other people, right? People who change from D to C, why did you change that? What did you not notice earlier? Because there's a pretty big learning from that. Not the length of the entire diagonal, half of it. Absolutely right. Right. What you need over here, the question is asking you, what is the distance between the center of the rectangle and its vertex? So we don't need the entire length of the diagonal. Choice D actually gave you the entire length of the diagonal. What we need is half of it. Now, how can you rectify that mistake? There were quite a few of you who had selected choice D, about 9 of you who had selected choice D, and then you went to choice C. Forgot that the final question was to find the length of the entire diagonal, right? So how can you prevent that mistake? How can you prevent yourself from doing that mistake again? What will you do? Read slowly, yes. What else? What else will you do? And again, that's got nothing to do with geometry concept. What is it that you will do? You will write down what is it that the question statement is asking you. You will make that very, very clear. What is it that we need? What we need is distance, which is equal to half of the diagonal. You're going to write that down, or maybe you'll just write down D as the distance and say the correct answer is equal to D by 2. You will write that and you will maybe put a box around it so that towards the end, when you get into the calculation mode and when you're selecting the answer choice, you don't end up selecting D as the answer, because more than likely you are going to see the test maker is smart enough, is cunning enough to put that D as one of the choices. Okay, so very important learning, and which is applicable across the board for all of quant. Okay, now how is it that you draw inferences? Think about it. You need, first of all, you needed to translate what is to be asked. The question maker explicit could have simply said what is the diagonal, or right, what is D, but he didn't want to make it that easy for you. So he said, okay, what is the distance between the center of the rectangle and its vertex? Which means you had to translate that to figure out that what the test maker is asking you is what is the length of diagonal, what is half the length of diagonal, right? So you get to that point, you do the translation, you get to that point. Then you read the length of the rectangle, which means that now you're dealing with diagonal in a rectangle. Now you recollect appropriate properties of diagonal of a rectangle. You understand, that's where you apply your conceptual understanding. Diagonals bisect and equal diagonals. You infer that, okay? So notice how the process skill of translation and inference, they all play a role together, right? You go from one point to another by applying the process skills, and then you retrieve appropriate concepts so that you can draw the right inference to get to that next step in the solution, right? Now, we can consider any of the two diagonals. Let's consider the diagonal AC. So OA is what you need, and OA is half of AC, and that's what we need to find. Now, you need AC. What you see over there is a rectangle. You needed to draw the rectangle. How many of you drew the rectangle in your scratch pad? Yes, no. How many of you drew the rectangle? Good. Anybody who did not draw the rectangle, click on no. Because if you did not draw the rectangle, and thank you for being honest here, if you did not draw the rectangle, then the Pythagoras theorem would not jump out at you. Okay, that is going to happen. Okay, which is why again you need to visualize, as if it says it's a rectangle, draw the rectangle out, right? And so that when you are seeing AC, when you see it right in front of you, you see, oh, I need AC and I have P and Q here, I can apply Pythagoras theorem, right? So now you see how visualization helps you retrieve appropriate concepts, and then you apply that concept. Now it's not like you don't know that what Pythagoras theorem is, you know that, right? But you may not have gotten to that point to apply that if you had not drawn the figure of this rectangle. Okay, so now you need to find P and Q. How can you find P and Q? You go back to the question statement and you see length of the rectangle is 9 centimeters more than its width. So, and then area of the rectangle is 90. So you have P and Q. You have two relationships between the two variables P and Q. You plug in those relationships, and then what you end up getting is the value of Q is 6 and the value of P is 15. Okay, now you simply utilize the Pythagoras theorem and you find the value of AC. Now AC is square root of 261. How many of you actually got to this point of the solution? AC is square root of 261. People who did not get to this point, click on no. Okay, so people who did not get to this point, why did you, which step did you falter at? And one more point over here, if you ask me a question here, please copy that question in the Q&A pod as well, because I may not be able to take all the questions, right? So I don't want your question to go away because I keep clearing out questions from this poll, okay? All right, so stuck in solving quadratic equations. So the feedback to you, and I knew that people who are not able to get to AC is equal to 261 square root, they typically falter at the quadratic equation step. Now, that has got nothing to do with your geometry concepts, right? Which means that what you need to now work on is you need to work on your quadratic equation skills, which is in a separate module in algebra, a dedicated module, okay? All right, so that's the feedback to you. Now let's talk about another one. I chose 15 instead of 6, okay? But observe, so again, this is you would not have chosen negative 15. You chose 15, which means that you made an error in how to solve quadratic equation. Now, typically, students classified, how many of you would have classified that mistake as a silly mistake? Oh, I chose 15 instead of 6. That's and that was a silly mistake. How many of you classify that mistake as a silly mistake? Nobody? That's good, because you should not classify this mistake as a silly mistake, because silly mistakes don't have a corrective action. Okay, so classify this mistake as a simplification mistake. Simplification of what? Of a quadratic equation, which means that now you have a corrective action for that. What's the corrective action? Going through the quadratic equation module. Okay, now by the way, we can't conclude that diagonals bisect each other, right? Absolutely not. Go back to the conceptual understanding of diagonals in a rectangle. They do not bisect. Okay, so good. Now now how many of you got to the point that AC is equal to square root of 261 but didn't know how to solve it? How many of you didn't know how to process it? Or how many of you got that sense, oh no, how do I do this square root calculation? All right, so the way to do the square root calculation is another, I would say, best practice. Look at the answer choices. Take cues from the answer choices. Observe that your answer choices have square root of 13 and square root of 29, which means that you can take that hint and you can try expressing 261 as a multiple of 13 or 29, whichever is applicable. Don't do a trial and error, because if you do trial and error, you will get very anxious. Again, utilize appropriate strategies to make your life easier. Okay, and again, this is something that we cover throughout the course as we go through various ways of enhancing your ability to do calculations. Okay, so express 261 as a multiple of 13 or 29. When we do that, what we get is we realize that 261 is a multiple of 29, and you can take 3 common. What you get is OA is equal to 3 square root of 29 divided by 2. Okay, so in this question, what have we learned? We've learned that we need to take things, we need to draw appropriate inferences. Those inferences help us guide through the entire solution, telling us what kind of concept that we should retrieve, what kind of strategies that we need to apply to solve the question. Okay, so what's the learnings that you have had from this question? Don't rush. Good. Since time is a constraint while solving the question, how do we know that we are doing it wrong? That's an interesting question. Again, I don't let the time guide me as to what to do. Frankly speaking, as you're going through stage one, when you're learning concepts and methods, as long as you're preparing for from the course that you trust, as long as you know that these are the skills that you have to build, you need to attain appropriate conceptual understanding, you need to build your process skills. When you're going through stage one, you should not worry about the time, okay? Because you need to trust the course that you're using, the Quant 2.0 course, is going to build all those skills so that you don't have to worry about whether you're doing things right or not, okay? All you have to do is give us your best. It's our job to give you the tools. We have actually created those tools for you, and after this question I'm going to walk you through those tools, okay, so that you don't you don't have to worry about those things, okay. Now there's a student whose test is day after tomorrow and it's giving me so much anxiety that I'm still taking forever to solve the questions correctly. Well, write to us. I'm not going to sit here and say magic is going to happen. If you feel that if you were not in group A in the first in concepts, and if you are finding the scope of these various areas where you can improve, then that means those are the corrective actions that you need to take, okay. Can those corrective actions be, again, I have no information about where you're at right now, but if you are feeling anxious, if you're not able to apply these process skills, then that tells me that there is a big scope of improvement. So should you be postponing your test? Probably yes. And yeah, but write to us so that we can help you out. But again, no magic is going to happen in 2 days, okay. All right, so let's move forward to our next question here. And I will not give you a chance to solve this question. Let's go through what is it that you had to apply, the learning that you had to apply. Now observe here, what's given to us is that it's a quadrilateral ABCD. And let me show you the question, your initial solution here. Question number 2. You can postpone the test, but I believe you may have to pay money for that because it's pretty close to your test date. So you'll have to take a look at the rules. All right, so this is, oh, sorry about that. Yeah. So yeah, so we will take a look at the solution for this one. So what you're given is a quadrilateral. Now for a quadrilateral, and what you need is point E is the intersection point of the diagonals AC and BD. Is AB, which is one of the sides of this quadrilateral, greater than BC? So that's what you need to figure out. Now, even though this, how many of you assume that this quadrilateral is a rectangle? Some of you did. So you made an incorrect assumption. This is not a rectangle. It may appear to be, but it's not a rectangle, okay? So one major learning for you from this question is that do not make assumptions. You cannot make assumption that it's a rectangle unless it's explicitly stated. So it's a quadrilateral and there is no special linkage between the diagonals of a quadrilateral, which means that, again, that's what you're inferring, okay? So, and what do we need to figure out is one side of this quadrilateral greater than the other side of this quadrilateral. Now let's take a look at statement 1. EC is equal to 5 centimeters. Now, can you assume that AE is equal to 5 centimeters? No. All you can say over here is that AE plus EC, which is the two parts of the diagonal, is equal to AC, the entire diagonal. That's the only thing that you can assume, that you can infer from here, okay? You cannot infer that AC is equal to 10 centimeters, not at all. right? So from statement 1, we really cannot say anything about which side is bigger, which means that statement 1 is not sufficient. So for those of you who selected choices A and D, about 16 of you, you made a mistake there. Most likely you assume that statement 1, that this quadrilateral is a rectangle. Okay. All right, now let's move to statement number 2. Observe what does statement 2 say. The highlighted part says all interior angles of ABCD are right angles. What can you infer from that? What you can infer is that ABCD is a rectangle, right? So you need to have that level of conceptual clarity, not just saying that if it's a rectangle, then all the angles are right angles. But if all the interior angles are right angles, then that's a rectangle. You should be able to draw that reverse linkage, figure out that reverse linkage as well. Okay, that's the level of clarity that you need so that you can solve such questions correctly. Okay. Could it be square as well? You won't go to square because you don't have information about whether all the sides are equal or not. Yes, it could be a square, but it could not be a square. But you can say for sure that it's a rectangle. Okay, because nowhere in this statement is it given that all sides are equal, right? Because if it were given that all sides are equal, then you already would have the answer to your question, right? So you cannot infer that it's a square. Again, the inferences that you're drawing are absolute truths. Yes, it's a rectangle, or all squares are rectangles, right? But all rectangles are not squares, right? So you have to always understand that segmentation. Okay, so ABCD is a rectangle. Now, because we are dealing with diagonals, we should retrieve the properties of diagonals of diagonals. So diagonals bisect each other. AE is equal to EC, BE is equal to DE, and diagonals are equal. AC is equal to BD. Okay, so each of these segments is equal. Now, what is it that we needed to figure out? The other thing that's given to us in this statement is that the perimeter of this triangle, the shaded triangle, the gray one, is greater than the perimeter of this orange triangle. So you write that equation down, then that inequality down, and then you figure out, you populate both the perimeters, and then you see all the green items are going to get cancelled out because they are all equal. Okay, which means that from here you get a definite answer to your question that AB is greater than BC, which means that this statement is sufficient. So choice B is the correct answer. Now, quite a few of you actually selected the correct answer for this one. So I just want to make sure that all of you who selected choice B go through the solution once more when I share the PDF with you, and make sure that that you selected this answer for the right reasons. Okay. All right. I know it's a very feeling of happiness when you get the question correct. Absolutely. Just make sure that you got it right for the right reasons. Okay. So do not make assumptions from the figures. That's very, very important. Okay. Now, what does it take to score a Q50? What we have done so far is that we have figured out what is the level of your conceptual clarity. We then built upon your process skills, and then we applied those process skills to solve difficult questions correctly. So in order for you to do well, in order for you to get that Q50, you need to work on each one of these one by one. Okay. Now, how do you build your conceptual learning? You build your conceptual learning by going through the concept files that have been specially created in each and every module. So I'm going to give you an example of the 2D2 module, for which you also have some component in the free trial. The first 3.3 files and 3.4 files, in that we teach you the concept pertaining to quadrilaterals, and then we test you whether you have gotten that concept well or not. Then you see 3.9, 3.10, 3.11, 3.12. Again, all of these are concepts pertaining to circles and then circles and tangents, right? So you build your conceptual understanding. Then what do you see right underneath the conceptual understanding? You see process skills, you see GMAT skills. So you first build your conceptual understanding, then you learn the process skills, and then you apply those process skills to solve difficult questions correctly. So the progression that we saw in this session, that is the progression that you have in each and every module, in each and every course of Quant 2.0. Okay, that is the power of learning in a progressive manner. You learn the concepts, not just learn, you get that 100%, and I always say 200% clarity in the concept, so that you can apply those concepts to draw inferences appropriately, right? Then you learn how to apply those concepts to solve questions in process skill files. Now these questions are 600 to 700 level questions, right? Not very difficult questions, but you learn how to apply the process skills there. Then you learn how to apply those process skills to solve 700 level questions. Okay, so Quant 2.0, that's the course that makes sure that you learn in a progressive manner, so that you not only learn the right way, you also learn in the most efficient way. Okay, why am I so confident that this course is going to work for you? Because of the success that we have been able to deliver since the launch of this course. In fact, since the partial launch of this course. We started launching modules for this course back in January. By March, we had launched only 60% of the course. But what you can see is, even with that partial launch, we launched the entire course only in the month of June, but even in the partial launch, with the partial launch of course, we started to see the impact of this course on the success of students. So here you see a chart, and you can see that e-GMATers have delivered more 49 plus scores in the entire year till now than any of the other competitors. Okay, and that is, yes, this is total till 2021. What I'm saying is that we launched the entire course in June, and still you see that we have been able to show so much of success. Our students have been able to report so much of success. Okay, and that is possible only because of the architecture of the course, only because of the depth of the course, only because of the way we teach each and every aspect in the course. Okay, now let me ask you this question: how many of what is your current quant score? And let me get that poll here. All right, tell me, what's your current quant score? So I see that there is an even split between these two segments, Q35 to Q42, Q43 to Q47. Okay, and Q35, there are few people in that. Now, would you think that, so each one of these segments, the students in each one of these segments requires a unique solution, right? So how would a single course serve the personalized needs of each one of you? That's the power of the expert AI, which powers Quant 2.0 course. Let's just take the example of geometry. The total of 76 learning activities amounting to about 40 hours of content. Now, based on our experience, a Q30 student would need to go through all the 76 activities. A Q45 student would need to go through just 30 activities, and a Q49 student will need to go through just 12 activities. Okay, depending on that's based on our experience. Now, how do you ensure that each one of these students will be serviced well with the Quant 2.0 course? That's the power of the diagnostics, which is at the heart of the expert AI. As we talked about early on in the session, before you start any module, and I'm not just talking about geometry course, I'm talking about a specific module in geometry course, you go through a 2-layer fine-grained diagnostics that tell you exactly what is it that you need to learn. Okay, and what is it that you do not need to learn? Why should you be spending time going through the concept file if you are 100% confident about those concepts? If you are part of group A, why is it that I should expect you to spend that 1 hour going through that concept file and then another 10 minutes going through the practice quiz? No, that's not a good use of your time. Okay, likewise, if you are in group B, then I don't want you to be solving 700 level questions till the time you don't build your process acumen, till the time you don't build your conceptual understanding. Okay, so you need to know what is it that you need to learn at that time, right? And that is how the expert AI, using these diagnostics, is able to give 5 unique learning paths per module, which means that In geometry course itself, there are 625 unique courses possible, which ensures that each one of you will be able to get the course that you need. Okay, that's the power of having expert AI driven coursework. Okay, now the question is, yes, you are going through the content that you need to go through, but how do you know that you've improved? How do you know that you've gotten now from Q35 to Q45 and now you're ready to go to Q49? You know that because you get evaluation you're evaluated every 30 minutes of the time that you spend on the platform, and you're given appropriate feedback. Okay, every learning activity in Quant 2.0 course provides you with personalized feedback. Okay, you get feedback by the expert AI, and the expert AI checks out whether you've accessed the concept, whether you've completed the concept, whether you've spent sufficient time on the concept, or whether you have scored below or above the threshold. Looking at each one of these aspects, the expert AI gives you feedback. Yes, you've learned perfectly. You need some selective revision, or you need to redo. Okay, that's the power of an expert AI driven Quant 2.0 course. And looking at what Varun said, the feedback told me where I had to revise. I was able to improve to Q49, even though I had no time to go through the cementing stage. Okay, Diagnostics told me the activities that I had to focus on. And that's a very, very powerful thing. And if you think about it, you shouldn't really have to worry about what concepts to review and what concepts to not review, what questions to solve and what questions not to solve. That is the job of the course. The course needs to tell you that, yes, you don't need to go through this, but yes, you need to focus on this. You shouldn't really have to create quizzes on your own going on other platforms. No, you deserve to have those specially curated questions that test that give you that are served based on your ability level. Okay, Anant, with this architecture, it doesn't matter where you are in your preparation. You start at the right point and you're able to track your improvement. That's the power of the Quant 2.0 course. Okay, Dipinti, who scored a 760 with a Q50, the Quant course cleared my concepts and taught me how to apply them on GMAT questions. Okay, so long story short, if you go through the Quant 2.0 course in a diligent manner, in a step-by-step manner, taking each and every diagnostic quiz properly, and then listening to the feedback that we provide you after the diagnostic quiz, and then implementing that feedback, going through the course in the right manner, there is no reason why you will not be able to succeed. Okay, now I see that okay, so let me ask you a question here. What is it that you have taken away from this session? We have one more question to solve. So when I say one more question, one more 700 level question, but I want to make sure that you guys are in the right frame of mind, because it's been 2 hours in this session and you guys have gotten a lot of learnings, and sometimes we need some time to absorb those learnings. So I don't want to overburden you with another set of questions. Okay, so tell me, what all have you learned till now? Because again, what I would like to do is I'd like to give you the PDF. Actually, let's move on to this part here. Sorry about that. I would like to give you the PDF of this session so that you can go through the last module, the last set of questions over here correctly, because again, these are more difficult questions. So I don't want you to go through them when you are tired. So I'll give you the PDF of this one so that you can go through that, and I'll give you the next set of activities. Also, I'll share with you the recording of this session so that you can go through this my delivery of these questions. Okay, so I'm going to give you all those links. Okay, but as next steps, what I want you guys to do is, let me just show you the geometry course real quick. Okay, so one step at a time. So all Quant 2.0 students, you need to go through the Quant course. You need to follow the expert recommended course structure. Okay, which is when you get feedback from each and every diagnostic quiz. Okay, you need to master the process skills, and you need to excel in GMAT skill files. That's very, very important. Okay. Now, these are the 4 modules. Lines and angles, you begin with that. 2D1, in which we cover polygons and triangles, then 2D2, in which we cover quadrilaterals and circles, and then we have combinations and 3D. Okay, go through all the 4 modules. In each of the 4 modules, you'll see the same structure: 2-layer diagnostic tests, concept files, process skill files, and GMAT skill files, everything powered by expert AI. Okay. For free trial students who are still not convinced that Quant 2.0 is the right way to go, I want you guys to give yourself enough time to absorb the content that you're going to see in Quant 2.0 course. For that, take the free trial, evaluate whether what we have talked about in this session and whether what you see in the free trial fits your learning style. Okay. Do you think that going through the diagnostics is going to help you? Do you think that this concept file is going to clarify your doubts? Do you think that the process skills are the way to learn? Okay. And then you can make the decision to purchase the full course. For you, as I said, you see a snapshot of the entire quadrilaterals module, which means that over here for GMAT skill diagnostic test, for concept diagnostic quiz, you're going to get feedback on entire quadrilaterals, on entire quadrilaterals and circles, not just quadrilaterals, but you're going to improve your ability in the quadrilaterals part. Okay. All right. Now, let me share certain documents with you, and I need to upload the PDF, so that's going to take me a couple of seconds. But while I do that, I want you to put in your aha moments from the session. And I know you guys are tired, but I want you to do your best over here, and definitely click on these YouTube interviews links. I spoke about Varun, I spoke about Anant, I spoke about Dipinti, and so definitely look at them. I need to change this session PDF. Okay, yeah, I need to clear this one out. Let me give me a couple of seconds. And another thing is, if you have any questions about your GMAT preparation, then feel free to book a call with the e-GMAT mentor over here. And also, there's something else that I had to share. Yes. So right now we are running a deal. I'm not sure how many coupons are left here, but definitely click on this and see if you can avail this deal for Quant Online Intensive. All right, I'm just saving this PDF. So give me 1 second here, a couple of seconds indeed. Okay, I would truly want you guys to write down your aha moments from the session, because that gives me the satisfaction that you guys have learned, right? So I want to make sure that you guys write that over here. All right, just a couple more seconds. Here's the PDF. What's the total duration to complete quant modules? See, that's a good question, and frankly, it depends on what your starting level is in each of the modules. I won't even say what your starting level in overall quant is. It depends on your starting level in each of the modules. So there are people who finish, for example, 2D2 module, they can finish it within 3 days. Okay, there are some people who take 7 days to finish 2D2 modules. So the entire geometry course, on an average, people take about 10 days to finish the entire geometry course. Okay, so again, it all depends, because you have these diagnostics and you get the feedback, you basically the amount of time that it takes to finish the course depends upon you. Okay, but typically the entire geometry course can be done in 10 days. Likewise, for each course, around 7 to 10 days, if you are following all the directions properly. Okay, can a person complete the whole e-GMAT quant and verbal in 13 days? Depends. What percentile level are you at? It all depends upon what your starting level is. If you are, let's say, at V25 in SC, then you're not going to be able to complete SC, CRRC and quant within 13 days. But if you only need fine tuning in all the sections and then you need to work on test readiness, then yes, you can complete it in 13 days. Okay, so it all depends upon where is it that you're starting from. Okay, it's the question that you're answering is right. So I hope that you understand that. Can you go from Q30 to Q49 in 1 to 1.5 months with e-GMAT course? Absolutely yes. There is no reason why you cannot. Right? As long as you are putting in the effort, as long as you're doing things the right way, you're following the directions that the expert AI is giving you. And I'll tell you, there are students who would, despite us telling them that you need to go through the diagnostics first, they would not go through the diagnostics. They would not go through the concept files. They'll straight away skip to the GMAT skill files because they need that additional practice. And that doesn't work then. Yes, all the content is there for you, but you need to go through the content in the right manner. So absolutely, yes, Q30 to Q49, it's very much achievable within 1.5 months. Okay, how to decide which course to buy, a 6 month or a 4 month one? Depends on, again, what your current level is. I would say you can buy a 4 month one course, a 4 month course, and then as you build your personalized study plan, as long as you're consistent, there is no reason why you would need to spend more money to buy a 6 month course. But yes, life happens. Right, maybe you get a project at work because of which your GMAT preparation takes a second seat. Then obviously those 4 months will get extended to 6 months. Just started, again, what's your starting level? I would say you can go ahead with the 4 month course. Make sure that you're consistent in your study preparation. That's something which I would say. Make sure that you create your personalized study plan. Make sure that you understand where you're starting from in terms of your abilities in each and every subsection. So go through your personalized study planner, create that personalized study planner, build your foundations, then start stage 1, then go through stage 2, which is cementing, and then come to test readiness. Okay. Is it possible to move from 560 to 720 plus within a month with e-GMAT course? Again, what does that 560 constitute? I would strongly recommend that you go through book a call with the e-GMAT mentor so that that person can so that our strategy experts can look at your current profile, look at your existing ESR, ask you to take Sigma X mock, and then create your personalized study plan for you. I would strongly recommend for that. So a 2 month course would suffice for a Q30 student. It should, but again, as I'm saying, a lot depends on your diligence. I've had students who within a week have been able to finish number properties course and get to that level such that they can now move on to algebra. But I've also had students who basically spend 1.5 months not being able to clear number properties. So it all depends upon how much effort you put in, how consistently you study. Okay. All right. So with this, what I'm going to do is, again, make sure that you book a call with the e-GMAT mentor so that you can get your personalized study plans created by them so that you know exactly how is it that you need to prepare. Okay. Okay, Q47 V31 in official mock but got 450 in Sigma X. Maybe I wasn't fresh before Sigma X, but I want to know, can I complete the course in 13 days? That's a little hard one, I would say. V31 means that you are, again, what were your subsectional abilities? Even if I consider V31 from your official mock, and even if I disregard 450, which is a little bit hard for me to, I'll have to take a look at your Sigma X mock to see whether it was not a valid attempt, right, to make that determination. But I cannot just ignore it just because you're saying that you were not fresh, right? You need to look at the data appropriately. But V31 means that there are at least 2 sections in which you need help in verbal. And each section, even if you are at a certain point, even if you know all the concepts, you would need at least a week for each section to fine tune each section. Plus, then you're at Q47. Most likely you want to go to Q49. You would need another at least 2 weeks to work on quant. Again, what I'm talking about right now is you doing cementing, and cementing, because you've already done stage 1. I'm hoping that then cementing is going to take some effort on your side. So again, I would strongly, 13 days I don't believe is going to be sufficient. I don't believe are going to be sufficient, but I would strongly recommend you to book a call with the e-GMAT mentor. Click on that link, and then so that you can get more personalized help, right? So it's very important to get that. Okay. All right, so with that, I'm going to end this session. It was really wonderful spending my Sunday morning with you. It was a really very enlightening experience for me because, again, when I'm able to help students identify why is it that they are faltering, and when I see that you're receiving that feedback, that's a very, very satisfying feeling. So, thank you very much for making my Sunday morning really, really pleasant. And I hope to see you on e-GMAT platform, and I hope to see you ace the GMAT with the Quant 2.0 course and with our verbal course, GMAT Online Intensive. And yes, good luck, and let us know how we can be of help. Okay, bye bye. Oh, there's one more thing that I had to share with you, and which was the recording of the old session in which I will be sharing this session recording with you. You'll get that email within the next 5 hours or so. But in addition to that, you would also, for the last set of questions, two questions, you would need this thing, my previous recording. So let me just share that with you. Copy the link address. One second here. So you can click on this one, recording for the last Gmail. Maybe I should just copy this link. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Good luck. Bye bye.